welcome to Sportsmole's live show, looking ahead to Liverpool versus Manchester United today, the big game. We will be looking ahead to the other games and looking back on yesterday's action as well in the Premier League. But obviously, the big one is Liverpool versus Manchester United. Myself and our football editor, Matt Law, as you can see, we've pinned our colours to the mast nice and early. This is the one we've both been waiting for all season, Liverpool versus Manchester United, the Sportsmole Football Shorts derby. Before we get started, you can have your say yourself by WhatsApping us on that number at the bottom of the screen, or you can also leave comments on YouTube to ask us any questions, ask us to look ahead to anything about the game or other games today. But yes, Matt, we'll start. We've already talked about this on our weekly predictions podcast. We know your predictions 1-1, mine was 2-1, but how do you see the game actually going today?
I mean, it's just a massive game, isn't it? In terms of, I mean, we spoke about it, didn't we, during the podcast, that games against Liverpool United are obviously always massive games, but I think this one does mean a lot more, doesn't it? Because of the position in the table, and I think the fact we're so far into the season. I mean, I'm guilty of saying this. I mean, I've said it a few times now. Oh, it's only early in the season, but we're 17, 18 games in now, so it's starting to get to the stage where the table is taking shape. Obviously, teams have got games in hand, and it can change very quickly, but top of the league, and obviously Liverpool dropping down to third as well, ahead of the game with Leicester winning, is obviously adds a little bit more, because it's not actually the top two anymore that are going to be going head to head. But it's obviously huge. And if United were to win, to go 6 points clear of Liverpool, again, very, very early, and Liverpool more than capable of going on a run. But yeah, I back to draw. I still stick with that. I think it's going to be a draw. Obviously, as you mentioned, your blinkers are on as usual, because you just simply don't back Liverpool to lose, which is absolutely fine. But I mean, I think I read a stat earlier that Liverpool are looking to avoid back-to-back league defeats for the first time since 1993 was the last time that happened. So, it's a long time, and Klopp hasn't lost back-to-back games as manager since 2015 with Dortmund. So, there's a lot of statistics going to this game, but it's a huge game, isn't it? No doubt about that.
Yeah, I think that's league defeats, the first two league games of the calendar year, but obviously after that defeat to Southampton last time out. But yeah, we haven't lost back-to-back league games yet under Klopp once, which is an incredible record when you consider he's been there for over 5 years. I think it is now, October 2015, if memory serves, he came in. So that's a really good record, and it shows the sort of level of consistency, even in the early days when Liverpool were far from the consistent force they have been in the last couple of seasons. Early days under Klopp, they didn't lose back-to-back games, which is another factor, the reason I don't think United are going to come to Anfield and win. Having said that, these big games are always a huge level of risk versus reward, aren't they? And there's always that fear that United, they do have the tools to come to Anfield and win. They've got that pace in attack, which troubles Liverpool. You think back, the clearest example of that this season has been that Aston Villa game when Liverpool lost 7-2, obviously, when they sort of they didn't change their defensive style, they didn't change their playing style, and they got caught out with pace behind time and time again. And United certainly have that pace. In a way, I mean, in the prediction show, I said that it depends partially what centre-back pairing we've got. Obviously, Matip, it looks more likely he might be able to start now than it was when we filmed our podcast a couple of days ago. Still, personally, I'd be surprised if he is thrown straight back into it. He's only had a couple of training sessions, and the way Klopp was talking was sort of leaning towards it might not be wise to throw him straight back in, especially a player who's had such injury problems as Matip has had. But in a way, I think it could almost, with Van Dijk, the way Liverpool were defending was very confident that Alisson would deal with anything that got through, and Van Dijk would deal with anything that got behind almost, and they sort of took a lot more risks defensively, whereas now, without Van Dijk and without Gomez, they're being a lot more conservative defensively, defending a bit deeper, not taking as many risks, not leaving one at the back to sweep everything up. So in a way, that might help Liverpool in this match against the pace. I think they're a bit less susceptible to pace now than they were with Van Dijk and Gomez, and the way they were defending with them, even though Van Dijk and Gomez are faster than the options they've got now, if that makes sense. But there is still the fear that, Nat Phillips or Reece Williams, whoever plays, maybe even Jordan Henderson at centre-back, if it's not Matip, neither are exactly the fastest, so that the pace of the likes of Rashford could certainly get in behind there. But having said that, it's 67 games, April 2017 since Liverpool last lost a league game at Anfield, so it's impossible for me to back them to lose, and I wouldn't even back a draw. I think you said in our chat with Sam Homewood that Liverpool fans would be happy with a draw, but I don't agree with that at all. I think a draw's a much, much better result for Man United than it is for Liverpool. In a home game like this, when Liverpool need a win to draw level on points with United, I don't think many Liverpool fans would be happy with a draw at all.
I mean, we'll have to agree to disagree there. I think that the form of both sides, good United have been on the road this season. Their form in general, I would. I mean, would you be disappointed then with a draw? Is that what you're saying? You'd be disappointed, or you wouldn't be pleased?
I'd be pretty disappointed as well. I could see what you're saying. I think, yeah, obviously the form book points to United being able to get something out of this game. But as a Liverpool fan, over the last 2 years, the results we've had, particularly at home, you go into every game, even Man City at their very height coming. I wasn't particularly happy with the draw in that game because you're at home. Liverpool can beat anyone at home. So I wouldn't be happy by any stretch. I'd be pretty disappointed with the draw because it keeps the title race in United's hands to a certain extent. It keeps them 3 points clear of Liverpool. If Liverpool were in control of the title race, then maybe I'd be happier with a draw than when we're 3 points behind United, because we need to make up ground now, and obviously the only way to do that is to pick up points where Man United drop points, and the best way to do that is by beating United.
Yeah, very true. Let's have a look at team selection, Barney, for this game. Obviously, there's, I think, the Liverpool one, which you'll speak about, probably the main talking point is the central defence. Obviously, I don't think there's going to be many surprises for Liverpool, going forward. Midfield obviously depends if Henderson's playing there. Obviously, Fabinho will be at centre-back. But for United, I mean, I ran through the team the other day that I think he will pick, with De Gea in goal, obviously, Wan-Bissaka, Bailly, Maguire, Shaw as a back four, Fred, McTominay in midfield, obviously both coming back into the side, obviously made changes against Burnley. I think there's got to be a place for Pogba on the left. I think he has to play for me. Obviously, there was argument early this season to be left out, but for me, he has to be in the side. Obviously, Fernandes plays, Rashford and Martial up front. I think Martial, obviously coming off injured late on against Burnley, looked like he would miss the game, but the fact that Cavani played 90 minutes against Burnley does suggest to me that Martial will be playing through the middle. Obviously, depending on fitness, it does look like he will be okay. It didn't look like it was a big deal. And for me, that's obviously 4-2-3-1. That will be a very strong side in a lot of ways that could hurt you, to be honest. Obviously, Fernandes picking up the passes, Pogba off the left, that I do really like. I don't think in midfield, when he plays in a two, he takes too long on the ball. He picks the ball up too deep. He takes chances, but if he loses the ball further forward, obviously that is not much of a problem. But playing off that left, I know we've spoken about if they've played a diamond at times this season off the left, in terms of wide of the midfield, 2 or 3. Obviously, he's played there with Juventus as well in France. So for me, that left channel suits him. Rashford off the right, a little bit debatable whether that's his best position, obviously, because he likes to cut in onto that right foot. But I think you play Rashford out there. Obviously, there's loads. The thing is, the options now. Talk about Greenwood. Obviously, an option to play on the right as well. The right is still an issue for United. Obviously, not signing Sancho. It's still a big issue for them to fill moving forward. Obviously, Amad Diallo plays there, who's come in now, and Solskjaer actually said they need to. Spoke to Norwegian media and hinted that he might actually be in the squad for this game. I don't think that'll be the case. Obviously, he could make his debut soon. But that's for me the United 11 I think will start this game.
Yeah, and well, from my point of view, a rival fan's point of view, I'd probably be more concerned if Pogba was. I think I agree with you. He has to play. I think I'd be more concerned if he was in a deeper position, maybe able to spray passes out to someone faster on the left. Because, as I said, I think pace is the biggest weapon United have got against Liverpool in this game. So maybe if Rashford was on the left and maybe Greenwood on the right, I'd be a little bit more concerned, because I think that on the break is probably the way United are going to hurt Liverpool most in this game. But Pogba usually plays alongside Matic, I think, when they play in a two, doesn't he? And McTominay and Fred usually come as a two as well. I'm interested to see what you think of centre-back. Victor Lindelof has obviously missed the last few games, and Eric Bailly's come in. If everyone's fit, strongest 11, do you think Eric Bailly's usurped Victor Lindelof as Harry Maguire's main partner now?
Yeah, for me, it has to be Eric Bailly. I think Lindelof's improved a lot since he come in. There's no doubt about that. He's a better player than when he first came to the club. But Eric Bailly, it's always been the issue, the fitness issue with him. But Maguire, he's made Maguire better. Maguire needs pace alongside him. Absolutely, it's not Maguire's strength. Maguire's been really good recently, to be fair. But Bailly throws himself at everything. And listen, he's going to make the odd mistake. He's going to do things that sometimes he maybe shouldn't. But his pace and his commitment, and I mean, pace is often, everyone's obsessed with pace these days, and I've been guilty in the past of talking about pace a lot, but you do need pace at centre back. Listen, Lindelof's not slow, but he's not as quick as Bailly, and he's not as committed in terms of throwing himself in front of challenges. And Eric Bailly recently has been unbelievable, and I really hope he can stay in the team and keep his fitness. I remember watching him at Villarreal before he came to United, and he's a player that I did mention that, a lot of clubs I think should be looking at him because he's so talented and he's still relatively young. He just needs that run of games in the team. But obviously, the centre-backs for Liverpool is the main one, isn't it? But for United, he's looking a lot better now. You can actually have your say if you want to message into us on WhatsApp, any questions, any comments about the game, about this game, about any of the other games. But this is obviously the main one today, and listen, it's a huge game. We've done a lot of preparation, a lot of build-up. We've spoken about it a lot, haven't we? And we hope it's not a dead rubber, a 0-0, but it shouldn't be. There should be some goals in this one, shouldn't there?
You'd hope so, yeah. It does promise it, but as we said, that sometimes these big games, we saw it earlier in the season with United, Man City, sometimes these big games can fall flat a little bit and end up being a 0-0. There's been a few occasions recently when United have come to Anfield and it's been a bit of a disappointing game because Liverpool in the last couple of years, we've been looking forward to smashing United and they come away with a 0-0 draw, which is always disappointing. But as far as the Liverpool starting 11 is concerned, I think... most of it picks itself apart from that centre-back partnership. I expect Nat Phillips to get the nod ahead of Reece Williams. I keep mentioning the pace there. I think Reece Williams' lack of pace really does worry me. He's obviously a very tall guy. He's got the stride length, which means he should really be faster than he is. But he does have a noticeable lack of pace, even more so than Phillips, who certainly isn't the fastest himself. And Klopp in his pre-match press conference sort of talked up the importance of Henderson in midfield, so I don't think we'll see Henderson back there. Obviously, he started alongside Fabinho for the Southampton game, which Liverpool went on to lose. That was really no fault of Henderson's. The goal came through a mistake from Alexander-Arnold rather than it being a purpose of the centre-back partnership. But yeah, I think Henderson in midfield adds a lot more to that midfield and to the all-round performance of Liverpool, driving them forward, setting the tempo and everything like that. So I think he'll go back to midfield. Phillips alongside Fabinho, obviously Alisson, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson in the fullbacks and goalkeeper area. Thiago, you'd expect to start, obviously, and amazingly, 4 months after he joined, this will be his first Anfield appearance for Liverpool, which is incredible, really. And yeah, I'm sure Liverpool fans cannot wait for him to really get a run of games in the team. He does just look... As we know, Liverpool have had such success over the last few years and have had such good players, but he just looks a class above, certainly in midfield. The passes, I know you're a big fan of him as well, the passes he can make and just, sort of things the other midfielders, even us watching, don't really see, and then he pings out a pass which breaks the lines, which is brilliant and could have had a completely new dimension to this Liverpool team, which I can't wait to see that on a regular basis going forward. So hopefully he can stay fit now. I'd expect Jorginho Wijnaldum to start in midfield as well. Obviously, there's news about his future that's come out over the last day or so, that he's apparently decided to leave Liverpool at the end of his contract, at the end of this season, and move to Barcelona, which will be a big blow. He's been a fantastic servant for Liverpool, played a big part in their success over the last few years. But he's also now, I think he's now 30, and Liverpool maybe move on from him. Wouldn't be sort of held to ransom and give him a big contract. I'm sure every Liverpool fan would have liked to see him stay, but it might just be that time if he really wants to go to Barcelona. Personally, I can't really see why you'd choose Barcelona over Liverpool right now, especially if Messi leaves this summer.
But come on,
why you can't? Why would you?
You wouldn't choose Barcelona over Liverpool?
Liverpool have got much more chance for success in the next 3 years than
he's been
Barca.
there a while, and he's won a lot of trophies. He's won lots of stuff there, and for a lot of the foreign players, I know he's not South American, and that does tend to be the clubs. But if you got the chance to go to Barcelona after being at Liverpool for a long time and having that experience he's had there and winning trophies there, it's difficult, isn't it? To then Barcelona, come on. Yeah,
no, but you can get caught up in the name. I think, to be fair, I think Dutch people have a very big connection with Barcelona because of Cruyff. They had some great Dutch players in their time. Ronald Koeman himself was obviously a great player there, and obviously worked with Wijnaldum at international level with Holland. So maybe that's part of it. But no, right now, from a footballing standpoint, I don't see why you would pick Barcelona. If obviously there is the lure of playing alongside Lionel Messi, which is something you tell your grandkids about if you're a footballer, but is he going to still be there when Wijnaldum moves? You don't know that. So, from a footballing standpoint, I think if you've got desire to win trophies now, Liverpool's a better place to be than Barcelona over the next 3 years. You could see, I can't really see the trouble Barcelona in. I can't see them being a Champions League force, winning Champions League in the next 3 years or so. But yeah, so that's Wijnaldum. Front three picks itself. Obviously, Salah, Firmino, Mane. you've got Xherdan Shaqiri in backup, and he played really well when he came off the bench against Aston Villa. I think he probably deserves a few more chances than he's been getting. Obviously, plagued with injury so far this season, but I think he does deserve a few more chances. Obviously, not from the start, but as we know, he's done damage to Manchester United before, so maybe he can come off the bench and do the same again this time.
Yeah, well, hope not. Hopefully not. But yeah, I'm just having to think. Obviously, we spoke about saying earlier, Barney, should we have a go at putting a combined 11 together if we can?
Yeah, it should be interesting.
I mean, there's a lot of these about at the moment. Obviously, we haven't. Let's just say we haven't actually spoke about this. Just another reminder: if you do want to have any comments or questions, you can WhatsApp in and we'll discuss that. But yeah, we'll have a look at a combined 11 now. I mean, it's obviously it isn't something that we've spoken about before, so it's not like we've put this together. We're going to be talking about it right now. Obviously, we'll start with the goalkeeper. For me, obviously, in seasons gone by, De Gea has been, the best goalkeeper in the world, certainly in the Premier League. But now I think he's been much better this season than he was last season. No doubt about that. Henderson coming back in has made him go up a level. But I'm struggling to pick him ahead of Alisson, unfortunately. Yeah. So we'll probably agree on that, won't we? Alisson in there.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's too much debate about that one. As you say.
Yeah, go through the back four.
Yeah, I mean, right back, I could see us maybe having a bit of a difference of opinion on current form, but I think Alexander-Arnold has to be for me. I think if Alexander-Arnold's in your United squad, he's getting picked above Aaron Wan-Bissaka. It's interesting, these two, because they've got the different strengths, haven't they? Well, Alexander-Arnold's arguably the best attacking right back around at the moment, whereas Wan-Bissaka is a fantastic defensive right back. But for me, it's Alexander-Arnold every day of the week out of those two.
The thing with Wan-Bissaka is, that's exactly it. He's so good defensively, so good one-on-one. Saw him against PSG, didn't we? How good he is against the top players. But going forward is an area that I've mentioned this for a while now. It does concern me. It's not even like he's particularly. He's okay in the final third. He's quite poor, to be honest, and it's disappointing for me to say that, but he needs to improve a lot going forward, like you say. And for me, yeah, as much as I want to disagree on that, I'm struggling with that one. So yeah, Trent in at right back, and obviously the centre backs for me is very, very interesting, because I'm going to throw Maguire in there straight away, because I think Maguire recently, obviously he's had off the field issues and his character, and for me recently he's been really good. Got loads of criticism, has had to take that on the chin. Some fair, probably some not so fair, but Maguire plays, doesn't he, in this 11?
Yeah. Particularly if we're only doing players available for this game. Yeah. So yeah, so no Van Dijk or Gomez in the mix. I think Maguire definitely in there. Yeah, to be fair, he deserves a huge amount of credit, because it wasn't too long ago. It was earlier this season he got sent off for England, and then there was all the talk about he needs to be taken out of this United team, given a rest, all that stuff that happened in Greece. I think it was over the summer as well. There was a lot of noise around him off the field. And it looked like he was in a really bad place at one point, but then I think in the next United game after the England red card, he went and scored, and since then he's just been improving the whole time. So yeah, no qualms with Maguire being in there, especially with Liverpool's two main centre backs out. I would throw Fabinho in alongside him, because he's been superb since going to centre back.
Yeah, he plays all day long. I think he's a fabulous player, Fabinho, and as much as I want to put Bailly in, because I absolutely love Eric Bailly, he's just fantastic. But yeah, Fabinho, like you say, one of the best holding midfielders in the Premier League, and for me, he could go and play centre back for the next 5 seasons and be one of the best centre backs in the league. So yeah, no question on that.
Well, this is all going very smoothly so far, Matt. Much more than I expected. Left back, I can't imagine there's too much doubt that Robbo gets in, does he?
I mean, you say there's not too much doubt, but Shaw recently again has been unbelievably improved. He's run a fitness, but it's very unfortunate he's coming up against Robertson, who is has been unbelievable for you assists. Up and down, can defend, can cross, can pass the ball, can tackle, can do everything. So Shaw very, very close to me, because I would. Yeah, it's difficult to leave Shaw out, because I think he's been excellent recently. But yeah, just Robertson, unfortunately, he's looking a little bit Liverpool heavy at the moment. So
yeah, I mean, Shaw has been good, but I don't think he's that close to Robertson at the moment. I think, to be fair, I think Robertson's been one of our best players this season. He's outperformed Alexander-Arnold this season. He's a level of assists. I think since the start of the season before last, I think he's now level with Alexander-Arnold for assists, and I think I'm right in saying only De Bruyne in the Premier League has got more than both of them. So we know the threats those Liverpool fullbacks possess, and it's been Robertson even more than Alexander-Arnold this season who's really shown that. So for me, Shaw has been good. He deserves credit for that, but I don't think that's too close for me. Midfield, I could see us maybe having a couple of arguments. So let's put in Thiago, shall we?
Yeah, I
bogus
mean,
of him.
depends what we're playing. I mean, formation-wise, doesn't it? But
Yeah. Shall we go, what, 4-2-3-1? I'm
yeah, I'd
thinking is probably the best
4-2-3-1
one.
down. Yeah.
All right,
So,
yeah. Thiago in there?
yeah, Thiago plays. For me, obviously, we spoke about Pogba playing off the left, but if you're talking about he's a central midfielder, if you're talking about central midfielders in the squad, and Pogba, obviously, Pogba, we could speak for an hour about him and his not being as good as he should be at times, but talent-wise, I mean, I'd be quite happy to have Thiago and Pogba as a midfield too.
Yeah. I would put the argument for Henderson being in there. I think he adds so much to the team. Yeah, I thought that'd be your reaction. He does add so much to the team and drives them forward. And but I think Liverpool fans know how important he is to the team with all these superstars and all these great talented players. Henderson obviously has a lot of talent, but the thing he brings even more to the team than that is, setting the tone, the example he sets. And he hasn't had an easy ride of things at all. Taking over the armband from Steven Gerrard, he almost got sold earlier in his Liverpool career. So to turn things round, and you've got people like Carragher hailing him as an absolute legend and saying he could have a statue outside Anfield one day for what he's done with the club, lifting the Champions League, lifting the Premier League after 30 years. He deserves huge credit. I don't think you're ever going to agree on Henderson being in the team, though, ahead of Pogba. I think Pogba's certainly a more talented player, 100%. But I think if you're looking, depends how far we're looking back, really. Last couple of weeks, and Pogba, yeah, he's been in great form. But before that, he was a bit of a drain on the United team, wasn't he? And a lot of United fans wanted him out. It's only since Mino Raiola came out and said his time's over that he's actually rejuvenated his United career. So I would personally have Henderson in mind, but I think
we'll go Pogba. We'll go Pogba.
Yeah, I think I'll concede on that because you'll never agree for Henderson above Pogba. But just remember that for later. I've got a pick. You've got to concede for me.
I mean, we're talking about 4-2, obviously 4-2-3-1. Let's go with the central player in that three. Obviously, I think we'll both agree is going to be Fernandes. Obviously, been unbelievable since he come to the club and just everything. And the thing that fascinates me most about Fernandes is that he does give the ball away a lot, doesn't he? I mean, he loses the ball a lot. He sometimes loses it in front. There was a example against Burnley as well the other night. They almost scored from it quite early where he lost the ball. It happened earlier this season. It was against Everton. No, Leicester. It was against Leicester when Barnes scored, and he does tend to do that. But because he's just so inventive, and his goals, assists, what he brings, his character, and he absolutely sails for me into this 11, and it's good to see because obviously it was Liverpool heavy, but it's good to get another United player in there.
Yeah, you can't not put Fernandes in there. The impact he's had on the team, as you could arguably say, been let's see what happens the rest of the season. But it's certainly turned United into, also runs into being top of the league pretty much almost single-handedly. You talk a couple of years ago about the impact the likes of Van Dijk and Alisson had coming into the Liverpool team, being that extra thing to push them towards the top of the table. And you've got to say, on the first year he's been there, Fernandes has had a similar impact to United because, what is it, between Liverpool and United, I think a 33-point swing since they last played about a year ago. So, the main difference in that time is Fernandes coming in at the end of last January. So it's a huge impact. I do think his goal tally is obviously brilliant, but a lot of them come from penalties. It's not like he's scoring those goals from open play, but the impact he has on the team, and I think goes far beyond just his goals and assist tally. I said when he first came in, just the mentality and the mindset he brings to the team. You could see him in, I think it was his third or fourth game. I still remember it. United came away with a draw, which at the time seemed like a fairly decent result, but he really came in with a winner's mentality that you see the likes of when they're doing punditry. You see the likes of Roy Keane and Paul Scholes and Gary Neville talking about this winning mentality, and you're not happy with the draw anyway, you're Manchester United. And Fernandes really sort of came into the club with that mindset, and I think he's drilled that into the rest of the team, and that's spread out through the rest of the team. I think that's been as important to their recovery from where they were as a club as anything else. I think just him setting the example. So certainly him at central attacking midfield, obviously player of the month as well, wasn't he, for last month? First player to do that 4 times in a calendar year. So he's had a superb start to life at United.
Absolutely has. I think the two wide players, obviously, we're not going to disagree on either. Obviously, Salah and Mane will have to be in the side. I think. See, Mane's only got 6 Premier League goals this season. That surprised me. He's obviously, he started quite well, didn't he? But he obviously has to play in this side, and Salah as well, 13 Premier League goals, and just been, a huge part of Liverpool's success, haven't they, recently? And I mean, interesting to see what happens in the future. With Salah, obviously, there's all this talk of will he go, will he stay? Obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if he did end up in Spain at some point, but obviously the coronavirus outbreak has decimated the two huge clubs in Spain's their finances. So not sure either of them could go and spend, more 100 million, whatever we're talking about, for Salah. So yeah, two players, obviously Salah, Mane, and for me, I will just say, well, the centre forward is an interesting one because Martial last season was very good. This season hasn't been that good. Firmino, I'm still not sure on. He's not particularly been fantastic this season. 5 Premier League goals. So Rashford's got 7 in the league this season. I put Rashford up front. Obviously, he hasn't really played up front massively or much recently, but he's been very, a lot of criticism. Obviously, the stuff off the field is fantastic as well, but he seems to make a difference a lot of time and come up the assist for Pogba against Burnley. Good cross into the box. He's improved in that area, and it's a difficult one. I'd be interested to get your views on that, but I would go obviously Salah, Mane, and then I'll go Rashford through the middle.
Yeah, Salah, Mane, I think shoe-in, certainly. The impact they've had on the Liverpool team over the last few years has been incredible, and I think they're right up there with two of the best wide players in world football at the moment, especially Salah. The goals he gets, it's just incredible. The consistency he's shown since coming to Liverpool. He's always in and around the Golden Boot conversation, which for a wide player sometimes maybe even goes under the radar a bit. And there was talk even last season that some Liverpool fans were growing tired of his selfish attitude, but it's not really a selfish attitude, it's a killer instinct really. And at the time when that was going on, there's always a question mark, who would Liverpool rather lose, Salah, Firmino or Mane? And obviously no Liverpool fan wants to lose any of them. The first season it was obviously Salah. We wanted to keep more than anyone. Second season probably Firmino. Last season probably Mane. This season probably has gone back to Salah at the moment. But Mane's he did have a bit of a goal drought, but he's always impacting games. He's always dangerous, and the three of them work so well in tandem together, which is why I would put Firmino's name forward for centre forward role. I know what he brings to the Liverpool team. The only thing undermining his case a little, I think, is the form last season and form for some of this season. He's certainly got back to form recently for Liverpool. That goal against Tottenham was a huge goal, and a couple against Crystal Palace in the game after that. So he's certainly got back to form, and the importance to the team of Firmino isn't weighed up by goals and assists or anything like that. It's everything else he brings to the team linking up. But having said that, he's been more frustrating in the last maybe season and a half. Maybe that's a bit harsh, but around that sort of time than he had been before that. He does give the ball away a fair amount, which you say Fernandes does as well, because he's trying things. He's trying to make that breakthrough, and sometimes it does happen, and sometimes it obviously leads to a goal. So if you can do that 3 or 4 times a game, it's a better impact than not having it. I'm struggling on this one in my head. Rashford, he's a very dangerous player. I think he's been slightly overrated ever since he broke into the team. Obviously, as a youngster, made that great goal-scoring start. I don't think he's really hit his full potential since then. But he is a very dangerous player, obviously, and that pace going through the middle would be difficult. I think I'd go. Yeah, it is a tough one, mainly because I think if Rashford played through the middle all the time, he might get the nod for me because he's actually, I think, better, and I think he said it himself. His preferred position is from the left, and I think he's better from the left rather than going through the middle. I think I'd probably go for Firmino because he plays through the middle all the time.
The thing I would, if it was, I'd be struggling to go. Obviously, it's difficult to pick that many Liverpool players, but I think the fact, Liverpool, we've dropped 18 points this season, which is, more than across the last 2 campaigns. And I think obviously it was always spoke about for me as importance to the team, as you've spoken about. I won't go over it again, but that's where I'm struggling, to be honest. Obviously, Cavani deserves to be in the argument as well. He's been unbelievable this season. If he'd have scored maybe a few more goals and if he hadn't missed those 3 games, perhaps put him in. It's a tough one because, like you say, if Rashford was playing through the middle every week and scoring goals, and it would have to be him. But for me, that's the hardest one to pick through the middle. I mean, I was thinking about, just you speaking, could we potentially play a false 9, or could Mane go through the middle? Could Salah go? Salah would probably be the one, wouldn't he? If you're going to go Salah through the middle, who could you throw into the other area? But it's difficult. I mean, if you go to a 4-3-3. I mean, it's tough, isn't it? We could be here all day doing this. Maybe.
Yeah, you could maybe put Salah up front and Rashford on the right, but then you're sort of crowbarring someone in through the middle who doesn't always play through the middle, which is my reason for not picking Rashford through there, really. But Salah is obviously has played there before and can do damage through there.
Yeah, I suppose you could
Yeah,
go completely outrageous and do something like put Henderson in midfield, take Rashford out, and have Fernandes just in front of a midfield three, and almost a split strikers of Mane and Salah. But it's difficult, isn't it? Maybe does Henderson deserve to be in the side over Rashford and Firmino? And probably saying maybe. So it'd have to be maybe a little bit of tinkering. Obviously, that's the thing you get when you're talking about this live. You're not really sure, but yeah, I'm not sure if Firmino, or I'm not sure if I think I can maybe give up Rashford, but for Firmino, I'm not sure. I'm probably more comfortable for Henderson and maybe changing the formation. But
interesting. Yeah,
it says a lot.
I think with Firmino, it's just when you're playing him with Salah and Mane, he brings out the best in them and sort of enables them more than ever to get those goals that they get so many. So to get the full effect of Salah and Mane, I think Firmino is the man to do that.
It's difficult. If you were to go, that'd leave us Maguire, Pogba, Fernandes as 3 out of 11. Is that fair?
I think so, isn't it? You'd have been happy with that at the start of this season.
Yeah, but now, I mean, you're talking about now, aren't we? Obviously, we do these sides when we do it and we write about them. We do them on, obviously, like you say, players that are available and form and things like that. I'm not comfortable with Firmino. I'm really not. Like I say, I'd give him up for Henderson. Have Henderson as a 3, and then Fernandes just in front with Salah and Mane up front as split strikers, and that's unfortunately the best I can do. I don't think I can put Firmino in.
All right, well, we'll take Henderson in there. What, false 9? Fernandes as false 9, is that?
Yeah, yeah, obviously a bit further forward than the 3, and yeah, almost like a false 9, and yeah, Mane and Salah obviously as a front 2, but a little bit wider, and I think that's a really good side on paper, to be fair.
We're reinventing the game, Matt.
Absolutely.
Great formation, that. All right, yeah, well, that's our combined 11. It actually went smoother than I expected. Only a couple of ones we really were struggling on, including that one, which obviously wanted a complete change of formation right at the death there, but promised to be a great game, doesn't it? I think you mentioned it earlier. These games can sometimes be damp squibs, but for me, it's either to be fair, I think it'll either be something like a 0-0 or maybe a 3-2. Obviously, I predicted 2-1, so that sort of contradicts what I predicted in the thing. But you can't struggle to go too ambitious in that predictions competition. But I can see it being a really open game. I think I mentioned in the podcast, you look at the United games recently and the different styles. But more recently, I said it in the podcast. I think if you play like you did in your most recent games, that you've against Burnley, and I think it was Wolves, maybe, and Aston Villa, which you've won. I don't think you'll win if you play like that against Liverpool. But if you play like that as you did against Leeds, and Liverpool play like Leeds did, which is quite likely they'll be open, they won't really alter their style, then it's going to be a great game, isn't it?
Yeah, terrific game. Like I say, I think we're getting a little bit carried away of looking at games. Obviously, nothing's going to be won or lost in this game, is it? It's going to be, and that's why I think we'll be happy with a point to keep that 3-point cushion. But it's a huge game. There's a lot of different, like you say, of different battles all over the pitch. The fullback positions, the midfield is going to be fascinating. I think that's a big thing. Obviously, Solskjaer resting Fred and McTominay against Burnley. You fancy they'll say they'll both come back into the side, and their energy. Fred's been fantastic this season. Fred's maybe a little bit unfortunate if Liverpool didn't have Thiago, I'd probably be pushing for Fred to be in that combined 11, because I think he's been one of United's best players this season. I think he's been improved so much. But yeah, a little bit of freshness to the United side, and I think something good is happening for United now. I still think doing that 11s and stuff like that. I still think you're looking at right wing, and I still think there's centre forward. Obviously, Haaland would be the dream, but 2022 the release clause, so nothing next summer, but the summer after that. But if United were to get a point here, the next couple we've spoken about before, they play Fulham and Sheffield United in their next 2 Premier League games. So Fulham obviously difficult to beat. We're unlucky against Chelsea last night, but it's funny we'll play the cup game as well, don't they? United Liverpool, and that's obviously going to be a lot different. A lot of players involved that won't be involved in this one. But saying that, you'd still expect the managers to pick strong sides. But I mean, what are we? 11 o'clock now. It's 4:30. I think the atmosphere will start to build. It's everything around the game as well, isn't it? What's coming? I mean, the fans being there is obviously far from ideal. But United's record against Liverpool recently, 4 Premier League games without a win, one at Anfield for 2016, I think it was. Rooney scored that late
5 years
goal.
to the day, isn't it?
Yeah, Louis van Gaal's side went there and picked up a win, but it's obviously a very tough hunting ground. I mean, Liverpool's home form, as we know, is unbelievable. So it's going to be a very, very tough game, but it's obviously one I'm very looking forward to, and let's hope that it does produce the entertainment.
Yeah, you mentioned the fans there. I remember it was like a year ago, almost to the day, I think 2 days short of a year since these two last played, and that was the game when Salah went through in the 93rd minute, scored that goal. Anfield went wild. It hasn't been that loud for a league game very often before. It was just sort of the game where the outpouring of emotion came, and Liverpool fans really thought, all right, the title was ours this year. I think we went 16 points clear of Man City with that victory, 30 points clear of United at that time. Almost a year ago to the day. So that United deserve credit, obviously, for closing that gap. Obviously, it's been Liverpool not being quite the force they were as well. So a bit of both. But yeah, that atmosphere of that Salah goal is the sort of thing that is going to be lacking for this game, which is obviously a real shame. But you never know. It's maybe not looking like it, but these two teams meet again on May 1st for the reverse fixture. Hopefully fans might be able to be back in for them, but May 1st is obviously very towards the end of the season. Schedules can change in these times we're in, of course, but if these two teams can keep up their form and still be around the top of the top two in the table, obviously Leicester usurped Liverpool in second place yesterday, but if they can still be the top two come May 1st, that's going to be one of the biggest matches between these two in a long, long time. And yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Obviously, there's a long way to go before that, including this game, but that does have some promise if United can sustain this title charge, and indeed if Liverpool can, to be a huge, huge game. Remember, you can have your say on that WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen or by commenting on YouTube if you want us to discuss anything. Let's have a quick talk about today's other games. You've got Sheffield United versus Tottenham and Man City versus Palace. We obviously looked ahead to these in our predictions podcast and gave our score prediction, but mainly I want to look at Man City. Obviously we're talking about Liverpool and United potentially being in the title race there. Man City, I think many people, a growing number of people certainly, are having them actually as favourites ahead of both United and Liverpool at the moment. The form they're in, they certainly seem to have found their feet again, and they've got a game in hand over those two teams. So, Liverpool and United, at least one of them guaranteed to drop points today. Man City will be viewing this day as a huge, huge chance to steal a march on at least one of those teams with a win against Palace, won't they?
Yeah, they will. Yeah, obviously City down in fourth now, aren't they, after Leicester one, but like you say, 4 points off the top with that game in hand. And yeah, they're the ones for me. Obviously, you can get a little bit carried away of talking about United, Liverpool, such a fantastic rivalry. Is that going to be the challenges for the title? But as you mentioned, City recently weren't great against Brighton. I didn't think they were. It needed to be fantastic, but was it 7 wins in a row now in all competition and 4, I think, in the Premier League. So fantastic against Chelsea, weren't they? Stand-up performance of the season from them, and one of probably arguably stand-up performances of any side in the Premier League this season, how well they played. So I think obviously selection for this game be interesting against Palace. Obviously no Aguero again, and a couple of injured Laporte and Nathan Ake are both out, but they've got some players back, and team selection will be very interesting. Obviously Palace come in, don't they, off the back of a really, really good point at Arsenal, and it'll be tough to beat. He's got a lot of options there. Hodgson, Cahill was on the bench, Dan was on the bench, Kouyaté and Tompkins played centre back for Palace, so they'll be difficult to break down. And City haven't been that. I mean, their last 2 home results was off the top 2-0 against Newcastle, wasn't it, and 1-0 Brighton. So they've not blown teams away particularly as they have done in previous seasons. And obviously they need a centre forward, don't they, next summer if they're going to really challenge. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all to sit here if we were sitting here, into this season and City were top of the league and winning the league, because I just don't think, we said it for a while, didn't we? It's not going to be a 96-point season, 98-point season. 84, 85 points might be enough. So City well up there, play Villa next, and then West Brom, and then the month home to Sheffield United. So if it's a draw, they'll also be hoping for a draw with United, Liverpool, and then they go and win their game, and they go and beat Villa and West Brom, and looking good, quite good at the moment, City.
Yeah, I think we both predicted pretty comfortable City wins. I think it was 2-0 we both went for in that game. But actually, Palace's record at the Etihad is really good. I think the last couple of games they've been really good against Guardiola's side. So they'll regard that as a potential banana skin, as I think will Tottenham against Sheffield United. But again, we talked about this in the podcast a little bit. But this is a tricky game for Tottenham, and one they will be expected to win. But one, if anyone was to drop points, you wouldn't be too surprised that if Tottenham did it against Sheffield United after those back-to-back wins for Sheffield United in the FA Cup and the Premier League, finally getting off the mark. We've seen last season and even this season, when they do get beaten, they don't get beaten by a lot. So that extra bit of confidence could be the difference between maybe them getting a result against Tottenham and not. And if Sheffield United were to take points off Tottenham, would you say Tottenham, not potentially out of the title race, but it would certainly damage their credentials, wouldn't it?
I think it would, yeah, more confidence-wise, if anything, and talk about points. I mean, what are they, 6 points off the top at the moment? That could obviously, like you say, if they weren't to win and United were to win, suddenly becomes, 8 points or so. And, I just don't think Tottenham are good enough this season to win the league. Of course, you've got fantastic players moving forward in the final third, but rely on their defence far too much. The style was obviously not being fantastic, and coming up against a Sheffield United side, as you mentioned, that will be starting to get a little bit of confidence. And I think you mentioned it, didn't you, in the podcast, they're very much a confidence team. The players are still there. They've still got essentially the same group of players that played so well last season. I mean, where did they finish eventually? Was it 9th last season, Sheffield United?
Think, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, they're more than capable of matching the best sides in the league, as they showed last season, took points off the big teams. So, yeah, it's a huge, huge game for Tottenham. And if they weren't to win this, obviously suddenly more questions come on the manager, don't they? Whether he's right for what they're trying to do. And I still think Tottenham are probably aiming for the top 4 this season. I think they really expect to challenge for the title, if I'm honest. And if they to finish top 4, I think that'd be a decent season. But I think we've got a WhatsApp question, Barney. I'll just read it out. Maguire on the back pages today saying United expect to win against Liverpool. If they don't, will it severely dent their confidence and affect the rest of the season? It's a good point when you're talking about. I mean, we spoke about this a little bit, didn't we, with Sam Homewood from MUTV on the podcast. I think you asked him about the mindset now of United. Do they really go to Anfield now? Obviously, when you mentioned they went there last January, didn't really expect to win. Liverpool playing so well, so clear at the top. But do United go to Anfield expecting to win? I probably wouldn't say that. I would probably say if they were to lose, I still think the mindset that Solskjaer's instilled in the players, I think they're strong enough to deal with defeat. Obviously, it'll be hugely disappointing, but I don't think if they were to lose at Liverpool, they'd fall apart. The season would fall apart. I think they'd take it as it is. They'd be level on points with Liverpool if they were to lose. So obviously they'll go into the game, and that's why I think the draw will be so important, because if you can just avoid defeat, it's not always about winning. You don't have to win all these big games, but just avoid defeat. And if they did lose, I think they'd be okay moving forward.
Yeah, I think with United, one thing they have been able to do under Solskjaer is generally turn up in the big games. To be fair, that hasn't really happened against Liverpool. They haven't beaten Liverpool under Solskjaer yet. I think it's 4 games without a win against Liverpool going into this game. But they've got a good record against Man City in recent seasons. You think back to those PSG results, they got those really big games. They can pick it up. It's more their season more falls down when they drop points to the teams they're expected to beat, which is those games I mentioned earlier where they haven't been playing particularly well, but they've been grinding out 1-0 wins in recent weeks. I think that's been the main difference between this season and perhaps last, is they're picking up points in those games, whereas in previous seasons they were dropping points in those games. So, will they come to Anfield expecting to win? I'm not too sure. Well, to be fair, I think when you're in the form they're in, 29 points from 33 games, you go into every game thinking you certainly can win, and they've certainly got the quality and the players to do damage against any team around. But there's also the aspect of Liverpool's home form. And you've got, even Pogba's come forward and said United aren't at Liverpool's level yet. Liverpool are still the standard bearers, I think, in the Premier League at the moment. So it certainly would be a big statement if they go there and win. If they don't win, I don't think they'll be too dented in terms of their confidence. If they lose badly, potentially, because then I think there's a lot of fans saying this could be a game where United, we spoke about it with Sam Homewood, there's still a lot of questions over Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Is he the man to restore them to the former glories and take them that next level to trophies? And I think there's a lot of fans thinking this could be a sort of game where the United get found out a little bit and their run ends and they could lose quite badly. I don't expect that to happen. I don't think they'll get beaten 3 or 4-0, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to see it happen. I don't think that is going to happen. But if it does, if United do get beaten badly, then it will be really interesting to see how they respond to that, because it would be a bit of a reality check for them, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. We got another question as well, Barney, on WhatsApp from Roger. Can Everton and Leicester keep pace for the rest of the season? And obviously, as I mentioned, Leicester went into second, didn't they, last night with that win over Southampton? And I mean, what Leicester have done recently is incredible. Everyone talks about their title challenge, this and that, but play Champions League football now. They're obviously right up there again, and it is incredible when you think about Leicester, where Leicester came from and the side they are. They're not considered to be, in with respect, a big club in terms of history of English football, and talk about the top 4, the top 6, and things like that in terms of the big clubs, with Chelsea and Arsenal being in that, Tottenham, City, Liverpool, United, but Everton obviously haven't played since the Wolves game of their game. Obviously, it was a Villa game was called off, wasn't it? That they were due to play, so they haven't actually played since then. But we're Everton now down in 5th, aren't they, at the moment? And obviously only 4 points off United on the same amount of games. So talk about Everton going under the radar this season, lost 5 games, but I think that's going to be so fascinating. You talk about West Ham down in 9th as well, only 7 points off United at the top. I mean, closing in the top 4, 3 points off the top 4. Would you be able to say with any confidence? I think Leicester have got a better chance, obviously, than Everton of, really staying in the pack. But if I had to pick a top 3 now, I would be going, not in this order particularly, but obviously United, Liverpool, City. I would be surprised if Leicester or Everton were in the top 3. I don't know what your views on that are.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think I certainly agree. Leicester are probably more equipped than Everton. The thing about Everton is I think they will drop points with regularity over the season. They've had a couple of really good spells in this season, and their main slump has come when I think James Rodriguez was out, and Richarlison was missing a bit. So obviously 2 big players for them. Now Calvert-Lewin's missing at the moment, so missing another key player. And I think they will drop points with regularity throughout the season. So I don't see them certainly mounting a title challenge. I don't see them finishing in the top 4, because the question you've really got to ask is, are they better? Will they pick up more points than Liverpool, United and Man City over the course of the season? I don't think they will. And I think that's the same with Leicester in terms of the title race. But I'd put them probably as favourites ahead of the likes of Tottenham or Chelsea, certainly Arsenal down there, ahead of Everton to get that final Champions League spot. I think Leicester have been really good this season, and I see fewer weaknesses in their side and fewer chances for them to drop points than I see for Everton and maybe even those other teams in the race. Obviously, you look at the likes of Tottenham and Chelsea, and they've got these world-class players who can always fire them to victory in any tight game. Leicester obviously got great players of their own, but not quite on the same level as certainly Tottenham. When you think of Kane and Son, Vardy and Maddison would probably be, and maybe Harvey Barnes certainly in that conversation. Tielemans, really, really good players, but not quite that level of the likes of Kane and Son. So that's the difference between Tottenham and Leicester for me. But the way Leicester are performing, the way they perform now for a consistent basis throughout pretty much the whole of last season, if you take away that bit after lockdown and this season, I think they're certainly in the conversation. Certainly in the conversation for the title at the moment because they're in second place. But I'd probably back them to get top 4 this season.
Yeah, I think obviously looking ahead to next season as well, isn't it? That's the big thing. If they can finish in the top 4, obviously we hope that next season, the fans are back and things are, very much on the way to being normal. And you talk about, Leicester or Everton, never Pat Goodison Park, Champions League nights, things like that. This season, I think, does provide an opportunity, doesn't it, for clubs like that to sneak in, because it is a unique season and it certainly will affect, the players. And to be fair, I think the players have done really well in terms of, the intensity of the games. I think when they first come back after the lockdown, June time, some of the games weren't great, were they? And then we saw loads of really high scoring games that were, for me, I didn't really like to see that. I wanted to see them something a bit more normal. And I think now it's settled down a lot this season, isn't it? But there's still going to be results. It's got to make it has made a huge difference. A packed stadium. If Tottenham maybe had a packed stadium against Fulham, maybe they might have found a way to drive forward. The teams would have driven forward. But when there's no fans to answer to in the stadiums, you play a certain way. So if Everton were to sneak into the top 4 and bring Champions League football to Goodison would be huge for them. And similarly with Leicester, obviously they've had a taste of the Champions League. They now know what it takes to compete at that level. Obviously been impressive in the Europa League. They're very much it's not maybe not an established European side, but they have shown that they can compete at that level. And it's obviously fascinating, isn't it? You're talking about up there, and Chelsea obviously won last night, didn't they? I mean, I thought Fulham were very unfortunate. I'm not sure what your take on that red card was from Robinson. It was late. I'm not sure about VAR, whether should he really overturn that decision. I thought it was a little bit harsh, to be honest, and I don't see Chelsea winning that game when it's 11v11, even though I backed them to win 2-1. I didn't think they were good at all, to be honest. And I mean, if Chelsea missed out on the top 4 this season, I really, really wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, because I'm with you. They dropped points with quite regularity, and 11 against 11. Fulham were very much in that game, and Robinson in particular was pretty good down that left-hand side and causing them problems. So if he had stayed on the pitch, maybe the result would have been different. I think that red card, I think once it's been given by the on-field referee, and you can see why it is being given by the on-field referee, it doesn't get overturned. And to be fair to VAR, we've been calling out for them to stick to the clear and obvious error message, which hasn't always been the case, and we just want consistency. And I don't think that was a clear and obvious error, because he was, you could easily say, endangering the opposition. I've always been, if you don't actually make contact, it's hard to be a foul, really. Certainly a red card. I know he made contact with the trailing leg, but not with the dangerous leg, as it were. But I do see why that was given as a red card, and I do see why VAR didn't overturn it. I think it was a bit of a reckless challenge, and I don't think the player will be looking back and thinking he was being cheated there. I think he'll be looking back and kicking himself for going into a bit of a reckless challenge, and not being a bit more careful with the force he used in the challenge. But as you say, Fulham played really well in that game, and obviously we mentioned them before. They're improving style. The fact they've taken points off Liverpool and Tottenham recently, a lot of draws in a row before that one, and that one could have easily been another draw as well. Chelsea sort of got away with one there, and big 3 points for them. Obviously there was pressure on Lampard. If they had gone and lost that game, a lot of pressure would have been on Lampard's shoulders for sure, because obviously that's a West London derby as well, and it would have been a big blow to their chance of getting in the top 4. And certainly getting back into the title race. But the fact they got the win, they ground out the win, sometimes they need to do that. The ongoing concern is obviously their goals. They were free scoring early in the season. Right now, Timo Werner missed that glorious chance, put it wide by a long way. I know you've mentioned Werner as well. Myself, as a Liverpool fan, obviously Liverpool were heavily linked to him in the summer, and I was a bit gutted we missed out on him, because I thought at that price, a really good player, really good goal scorer, but just hasn't really worked out for him in the Premier League so far, has it?
Hasn't at all, no. I mean, like you say, coming on, I think the fact that Abraham came on before him as well against Fulham, says a lot. Went up top with Giroud for a little while, and when he goes through, if that was the Leipzig days and has which is his game, isn't it? He was played through, and obviously the angle was a little bit. I mean, it wasn't like a gilt-edged chance, but for him, the type that he would slot into the back of the net. And I think that's a concern for Chelsea. They're trying to find that right formula, aren't they, in the final third? Got a lot of options, but huge win from them. And obviously a couple of other results as well, Barney, yesterday. Were some standout ones, weren't there? Teams towards the bottom of the table. Obviously Brighton going and winning at Leeds, and obviously the West Brom Wolves game as well. Obviously West Brom helped by some penalty decisions, but to go and win at Wolves, I mean, fantastic result, and been better away from home this season. And Brighton as well, it's a huge points, 3 points, isn't it? Leeds, and a great goal as well, wasn't it? Well worked goal from Maupay. Yeah,
really good goal. I think for Brighton, maybe even that West Brom result earlier in the day really spurred them on to get that result. Leeds were disappointing in that game. They've got a lot of plaudits this season, and Bielsa is obviously pretty revered around world football. But results wise, they've been pretty underwhelming recently, and even attacking, they've got a lot of credit for their attacking performances this season. But recently, that's dried up a little bit, and they're struggling for goals at the moment. Brighton were well worthy of that victory. They held out well when Leeds were putting pressure on, and obviously scored that really well-worked goal, which is an example of the type of football we've been praising pretty much all season on the podcast that Graham Potter's instilled in the team. Big victory for them, and obviously with Fulham losing as well, puts them even further clear of danger. West Brom certainly gave themselves a big chance to secure survival with that victory. That's a huge derby for them. I think it was the first in... I might get this wrong, but I think it was first in 8 years, the West Midlands derby, and it is the biggest game of the season probably around those parts. So not only to have a great game, which was great for the neutral, the topsy-turvy nature of it, and it swung both ways, to have the drama of the penalties. Obviously hugely disappointing for Wolves, and we've mentioned them a few times this season. They're underwhelming this season. Their performances haven't been good. Nuno would be devastated to have lost that game in the manner it happened as well, with a couple of controversial penalties as well thrown in there. But yeah, West Brom certainly given themselves a big chance to survive. A huge 3 points for them. That puts them into double figures in points for the season. And suddenly they've got something to build on. We've seen at home they get beaten pretty heavily in a couple of the Sam Allardyce games so far, but away from home, as you mentioned, much improved. And if they can pick up the odd result like that, as they did against Wolves, and look that dangerous going forward and capable of scoring, then they've certainly given themselves a chance to get out of the mess they found themselves in and end up surviving this season.
Big chance, so big wins for West Brom and Brighton. But what about Burnley? I mean, Burnley, a team we've spoken about a while. So they lost them yesterday. West Ham, it's what West Ham, 3 wins in a row now. So you mentioned how important Antonio is, and looking at West Ham this season, what they up in 9th at the moment. Really good start to the season. I mentioned if West Ham could finish top half this season, it'd be unbelievable. And will they bring a new striker to the club? They've obviously let Haller go, which is it's good money. I think they weren't expecting. I think David Moyes said they weren't expecting to sell him, but when they got a bid from Ajax that was relatively good, obviously they paid a lot of money. I think it was less than half what they paid, but to move him on, and a fantastic season. But Burnley, they're 17th now, 4 points above Fulham, and West Brom obviously 5 points above West Brom. Obviously West Brom played a game more, but Burnley would be the ones really concern me. I think joint lowest now scorers in the league with Sheffield United, 9 goals. 9 goals in 17 games is, you say it like that is terrible, isn't it, really? You're relying on your defence to, conceded 22 goals this season, which is pretty good for where they are on the table. It's more than pretty good. It's a good defensive record, but to only score that amount of goals, you're relying on your defence, an awful lot, aren't you? And they just can't seem to find the back of the net. I thought they were quite good against United in their game before. But I think we both backed West Ham 1-0 in that game, didn't we? Because we just expected West Ham to edge in front. And Burnley, I don't know what the statistics are in terms of Burnley coming from behind in the Premier League, but I should imagine it's quite poor. You don't really see them coming back and winning games. That they do rely on going 1-0 up and then defending. And when they fall 1-0 down, it worries me. So Burnley would be the ones that I've said for a while would be concerning me down there. Do you think, we spoke about, if you had to say right now what 3 teams you think go down, I'd probably say Sheffield United, West Brom, and I really want Fulham to stay up. I really do. I really like Fulham, and so I'm going to make them stay up. I'm actually going to go Burnley maybe to go down. I'm not sure what your opinion on that is.
I would probably actually go for the bottom 3 as it is now. I think Burnley will pick up points throughout the season here and there. They'll grind out those 1-0 wins. But yeah, as you say, the attacking statistics for them, they've scored as many goals as they've lost games this season, which is incredible. 9 goals and 9 defeats. But yeah, you mentioned their defensive record. They've conceded a few goals, and United are obviously top of the table, which is incredible. So it's so clear where their problems lie. Obviously, it's a lot easier said than done to fix those problems, but it's not exactly a new problem for Burnley. But because of that defensive record, they're going to pick up 1-0 wins throughout the season. They're going to pick up draws, scrappy draws throughout the season. They don't really get beaten by big numbers too often. So I can see them picking up enough points to stay in the division. I think Sheffield United, as well as they did last time out, to get that first win on the board, and I expect them now to certainly pick up points at a better rate than they were beforehand. But I think they've given themselves too much to do. West Brom, I think, probably fall into the same category as Burnley now they're under Allardyce, that they will pick up points on a more regular basis. But I think they probably left it a little too late, whereas I think Brighton have also just got a bit more about them than Fulham in terms to stay up. So I think Fulham and West Brom, to be fair, I think all 3 of the bottom 3 will start picking up points more so than they have in the first half or so of the season. But I think the teams above them just have enough of a cushion and will also do the same. Newcastle certainly aren't out of the question just yet. I think I knew the Newcastle Supporters Trust have said they're sleepwalking towards relegation this season under Steve Bruce, and they need to pick things up. But 5 wins from the opening 17 games for Newcastle, you'd expect them to get a similar number towards the second half of the season. That should be enough to keep them in the division. So Newcastle, I'd expect maybe to stay up. I'd probably say those bottom 3 for me are the ones that I'd say most likely to go down this season.
Yeah, I've been struggling to disagree that much. I think it's just because I do want Fulham to stay up. I say I really got a lot of time for Fulham, and their stadium's obviously one I enjoy going to. So I'd like to go there next season and sample that. But you got a comment from Easy on YouTube. He said, "Hello lads, excited for today's game. Got a big bet on it. You'll never walk alone." So obviously a Liverpool fan. I mean, what are we, Barney, now? 11:30. We're getting on in the day now towards kick-off, and I think it is. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of doom and gloom in the world, isn't there? At the moment, there was speak about a circuit breaker for the Premier League and for football in general, and ending that and have a time off. But I think football at the moment is, arguably more important than it has ever been, really, isn't it? Obviously, what's going on in the world, it's given a focus to a lot of people. Obviously, if you enjoy football, if you don't enjoy football, then it doesn't make too much of a difference. But the fact that football is going, and we've obviously got a huge. And there's so many games at the moment, isn't there? So many things, obviously, to keep us busy and everyone. But yeah, it's great to have a big game of this agenda without the fans. Obviously, we know all that. There's no fans, there's stuff, but it's still United against Liverpool, and it's the fact that it is a top of the table clash. I mean, obviously, it's exciting a lot of people, and I mean, let's just hope that it's a really good game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you're the same as me in terms of you've been looking forward to this all week. You've probably been dreading it more than looking forward to it, but we've been looking forward to it as Liverpool fans. And to be fair, the fact that another one comes in the FA Cup a week later is brilliant. I can't wait for that one as well. And obviously, FA Cup in recent years, the importance has perhaps diminished compared to the Premier League, more and more so. But these big games, whatever competition they come in, are always going to be brilliant affairs. And you wouldn't, Liverpool, their record in the FA Cup under Klopp is really poor, but they certainly won't want to go out to United in the FA Cup. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them put a bit more emphasis on that game than they usually would for an FA Cup fourth round game. But yeah, hopefully it's a great game. It's obviously going to be a great occasion. I can't wait for it. I'm sure you're the same. Thank you very much for joining us there, Matt. We're going to have to round things up here. It's only a few hours now till kick-off. We can't wait. You can find the full preview for it. Everything you need to know about the game is in that preview. That's over on sportsmile.co.uk. We also have previews, of course, for all the other Premier League games today and on Monday night, and all the other Premier League games, Championship games and European games over on Sunday and over Monday as well, over on sportsmile.co.uk. Myself and Matt will be back next week for the next round of predictions. I think there's another quick turnaround in fixtures, so we'll be back on Tuesday, I think it is, after the Newcastle game on Monday night. So be sure to check back in for that. We will see you again soon. Thank you very much for joining us. You can subscribe to us on YouTube and subscribe to us on all the usual podcast channels.